Hello, fellow witches and wizards. My name is PhoenixGinny, and welcome to the stream. Welcome to Storytime Saturday number 30. Nice. Storytime Saturday number 30. And it is time to start Goblet of Fire. I can't believe it. I can't believe I made it this far. I've read 3 whole books on stream. Hello, Julia. I just spent the last hour disassembling my sink stopper thing and cleaning it, and my sink is still clogged. Just wanted to share that with another adult human. Anyways, I'll be lurking for a bit. That sounds awful. I don't know why it's appearing on this live stream, but it's not appearing in my... It's appearing on the front end, but not the back end. The chat, but that's why I have it open on my phone as well, because sometimes that happens. Anyway... I'm sorry about your sake. Yikes. Anyway. So, yeah. I'm going to take a moment to reintroduce myself, in case anybody's watching for the first time, because, I imagine maybe some of you want to start at the beginning of Goblet of Fire or whatever. So hello, my name is PhoenixGinny. My real name is Erica, if you want to know. Forgive me, I'm messing with my mic. If you have never been to my channel before, welcome to my channel. We mostly play video games here, and lots of different video games. Nothing is really off limits. I play, excuse me, I'm trying to turn on my fan, because I can't run my air conditioner during the stream because it's too loud and it's like right behind my camera. But it's hot, so I have a little quiet fan over here. What was I saying? Video games. We play video games on my channel. My favorite kind of games are puzzle games and mystery games and story-based games. And I like to play puzzle games. I play hoba games. I play horror games. And I play like the Nancy Drew games. I also play The Sims a lot. I have something like 4,000 hours in The Sims. I play. There's a lot of that on my channel. You can find a little bit of everything on my channel. I'm also trying out FPSs for the first time in my life, sort of, kind of. And so if you're into that sort of thing, check out my live streams on Friday nights where I'm playing the Halo series for the first time. We're in Halo 2, so join me for that. Also, this is a big Harry Potter channel. I like Harry Potter. I'm a big Harry Potter fan. And, if you couldn't tell by my channel name. So I do a lot of Harry Potter things, or at least, I'm planning on it. I feel like I've done a lot of Harry Potter things, but honestly, all I've really done is I've played the Harry Potter Lego games, all of them. Both of them. I feel like there's a lot of them. I played both of them all the way through, and I'm reading the Harry Potter books, and I'm also going to be posting my reaction to the films soon-ish, and other stuff. There's a whole Harry Potter playlist section on my channel, if you like Harry Potter, you're in the right place. What do I want to talk about next? I had a whole idea of what I was going to talk about. I am a new channel, so I'm a new channel. I've been on YouTube for a year and a half. I'm a young channel. I'm a small channel. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm a small channel. So if you want to help me out, please do, and press the like button. It's really helpful. It tells YouTube that you like the video, and it's more likely to share it with other people. The algorithm likes. And if you're not a subscriber and you like my content, become a subscriber. I'd like to get to 50 subs. Turn on the notification icon. Turn on notifications. Click the notification bell icon, so you can be notified the next time I upload, because I do upload. I don't just live stream, but I also live stream, as you can tell. I live stream on the weekends. Friday nights I play video games, and Saturdays I do Storytime Saturdays, which is what we're doing here, in which I read. And so far I've only read Harry Potter, because, again, I'm a new channel. But I have read Sorcerer's Stone, Chamber Secrets, and Prisoner of Azkaban, and you can find that easily on my channel if you're interested in seeing the other ones. And my streaming schedule can change every once in a while. So if you would like to know what my streaming schedule is going to be, because I post it every week, follow me on Twitter. That is linked in the description. I have other socials in my description as well. I have an Instagram and a TikTok. I don't have very much on either of those because I literally just opened those. But I'm hoping to expand and put more pictures and clips. I would really like to put clips from my live streams and videos on my TikTok especially, and Instagram as well. But also, if you like to read, I'm assuming that you're here because you like to read, then you might also be interested in my Patreon. I have a Patreon page, link in the description, and you can become a patron for $5 a month if you'd like to support what I do. But if you like to read as well, I'm a writer, and I post my work on Patreon. I have short stories and poetry and personal narratives and essays and all kinds of things on there. Some of it is some of it you do have to pay in order to see. You have to become a patron in order to read. But if you don't have the cash flow to do that, there's plenty of free stuff too. I think there's actually more free stuff than paid stuff on there. So if you can't support me financially, but you still want to read my stuff, check out my Patreon anyway. I have plenty of free stuff on there. Speaking of which, next month I'm going to, I post something new every month, by the way. I post content every month, so you won't be missing out on that if you become a patron. So next month I'm going to be posting Harry Potter fan fiction, and I'm pretty excited about that, and that is going to be free, of course. And it's going to be good because I'm actually good at writing. So it's going to be good fan fiction, I promise. I'm very, very excited about that. And I'll give you more sneak peeks as time goes. So that's my Patreon. I think that's everything. I think I can talk about Storytime Saturdays now. Okay, Storytime Saturdays, welcome. So we're reading the Harry Potter series right now. It is not strictly an audiobook type situation. I don't want to infringe on any copyright laws. We read and discuss what we're reading. I stop every now and again to discuss what we're reading, to comment on it. We do talk about important things, educational things, whatever you want to call it. We do talk about sort of like what certain words mean, or sometimes literary devices or descriptions, or I don't know, different symbolism and whatnot that is in the novels. But it's mostly just essentially fangirling over what I'm reading because I love these books so much. So I'm just essentially just going through and just making commentary on how I feel about what's going on and what I remember when I read it as a kid and all of that. It's mostly just me just blathering on about how much I love what I'm reading. So, but I say we because it's not just me. If you want to join the conversation, please do in the chat. I read the chat, and I'm interested to know on what you think about what we're currently reading and discussing. And even if you're watching this and it's not live, feel free to join still. Right in the comment section, I read those and I will reply to you. So, yeah. Also, spoilers. I feel like that's a given, maybe. So I've read these books several times. I'm going to talk about the ending a lot. I'm going to talk about the movies and the games and whatever. So if you don't want anything spoiled, this is probably not the video for you. And everyone is welcome. It doesn't matter what house you're in. I'm in Gryffindor. But if you would like, if you're, Slytherin, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, whatever, you're more than welcome here. Let me know what house you are in the chat or in the comment section below. I'd love to know. And maybe you're not in a house at all. That's okay too. If you're welcome. If you're pureblood, if you're half-blood, if you're Muggle-born or straight up Muggle, you're very welcome here, and I'm very excited to have you. Okay, I think I talked about everything. So I'm so excited. Goblet of Fire. Goblet of Fire is a great place to be. It's a great, if you're just joining me now, it's a great place to start, other than maybe starting at the beginning at Sorcerer's Stone. But it's just one of the better ones. Goblet of Fire is one of the better ones. As I think I said this earlier, they only get better. Seriously. I really just enjoy just honestly, like, Goblet of Fire, you're not going to find another Harry Potter book like Goblet of Fire. Goblet of Fire is the sweet spot of the Harry Potter series. It's right at the peak, right when things really hit the ground running. So you get the best of both worlds in Goblet of Fire. Goblet of Fire, you get the fun and the whimsy of Hogwarts, and you get the funny, weird, teenage awkwardness of Harry, but you also still get the danger of what's happening in the wizarding world. This is the only book where you really get all of those things together. In Sorcerer's Stone, Chamber of Secrets, and Prisoner of Azkaban, you get the magic of Hogwarts, and you get the fun parts, and you get the lightheartedness, and you get a little bit of Harry being awkward. Not so much as you get in this one. But you get, it's mostly about just the joy of Hogwarts and the lightheartedness of the series. Not so much, you do get danger, obviously, but not war like you get, in the more grown-up Harry Potter books. And then, forever after Goblet of Fire, with Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince, and Deathly Hallows, you really lose some of the magic. Like, the magic is still there, but it's very deadly, very dangerous, very dark. Things aren't the way that they were, And so you might have Harry, and his friends kind of stumbling around, being awkward teenagers, which I love. That's my favorite part of the whole series, is how awkward teenager-y they are. But you miss out on the fun part, mostly. Like, you do get fun teenager stuff in Order of the Phoenix and Half-Blood Prince, but it's less prominent as it goes on, and it's very dark, and things get sad, and so it's less lighthearted. So the thing about Goblet of Fire is it's right in the middle. You get the best of both worlds. You get the fun part, but you also get the danger part, and they both come together nicely. So Goblet of Fire is halfway-ish. I think maybe towards the end of Goblet of Fire is more halfway in the series, just because the later books are much longer. But we are about halfway. We are at the peak. We're at the climax of the series. I like to think so, but the climax of the series is probably more Deathly Hallows for obvious reasons. But this is where things really get going, and it's really, really exciting. So to start, I want to show you something that I found when I opened this up. I was trying to figure out if I read the summary to the books. Do I? I don't think I do. There's always like a summary, at least in the Scholastic versions. I don't know if the Bloomsbury versions have the same summaries or whatever. I don't know if I read those. I don't remember. I don't think I do. Because then I would be compelled to read the reviews on the inside and all that, and you don't care about that. But I just happened to open it up, and I found this. I found this chart that I made, and it was my way of explaining to myself how Voldemort is able to kill Harry now. Because I had a hard time understanding, and a lot of people have a hard time understanding, Harry and Voldemort's connection. It's kind of hard to follow. And Dumbledore kind of explains it, but I don't remember where, and I don't remember how much he explains it, but I made this chart, and I wonder if I could make it real quickly for the stream. I'd have to go into Paint. Because you can't really see it very well. Paint. I didn't really prepare for this. Microsoft Paint 3D. New brush. Oh, no. New tube brush. Yes, it is. Okay. This is cool. Do I want Paint 3D or do I just want normal paint? I don't know. We'll see. What would be the best scene for this? That one. That one might be better. Okay. Let's see. So I have Voldemort on one side and Harry on the other. What do we want to do? Do we want to do pencil? Do we want to do pen? What do we want to do? It's weird how I did this. Sort of. Watercolor. Ooh, that's fancy. I don't want that. That's fancy. Pixel pen. I don't know. Okay. Let's go with a red color. A spray can. What does crayon look like? That's kind of fun. I hardly ever use this program. I'm only just now starting to get used to it. Paint 3D has fun stickers. It does have fun stickers. I use Paint 3D to make my custom thumbnails, by the way, because it's what I got. Oh, I did this already. Watercolor. That does look like a decent watercolor. Anyway, marker. There's Voldemort, and Harry's gonna be green. Which should it be the other way? Because Voldemort is Slytherin and Harry is Gryffindor. I do it this way because isn't that the color, or is it the other way? Isn't that the color of their wand magic? Isn't Harry green and Voldemort red? I don't remember. You'd think I would know. I'm pretty sure. Here, I'm gonna look up pictures. I want to know. Final battle. Can I? Yeah. I want to see the Prurient Incantatem. Which is... Ooh, look at that. That's nice. We got some fan art. I love fan art. I don't know if I can show you. We got some fan art over here. My face is in the way. That looks really cool. That's really dope. Look at that. Okay, so Harry's is red and Voldemort's green. My bad. So it's the other way. Okay, I probably should have known that. Okay. Anyway. Okay. All right. My bad. Undo that. You used to use the Paint 3D too. Okay. So red is gonna be Harry. Yes. No, that's green. Undo. Red is Harry. There he is. And green is Voldy. Okay. All right. So, how do I want to do this? Okay, so Voldemort tries to kill Harry, right? In Sorcerer's Stone. Well, yes, it's explained in Sorcerer's Stone. As a baby, on Halloween night, I think it was 1989, 1988, 1987, 1988, something like that. Anyway, the date doesn't matter. Voldemort tries to kill Harry because he thinks that Harry is the one to defeat him in this prophecy that he heard Snape tell him from Professor Trelawney. We're getting into a lot of things that are going to happen later in the series. So anyway, he tries to kill Harry, but he kills Lily first, and Lily dies protecting Harry. So that puts this protection around Harry. Let's do a nice purple color, pink color. Let's go with pink. Pink. So that's terrible. You think I could do like a shape, a 2D shape? The thing is, will it be empty is the thing. Like I want it to be. Yeah. Oh, can I change the color of it? My bad. I don't really know how to use this program. Oh, no, I want it to be... I can't. That's pretty good. Can I change the color of it? Solid line type. Yeah. Fill. No, don't fill. How do I change the color of it? I mean, I guess it doesn't matter, but... Anyway. Lily put this hedge, this protection around Harry when she died. So Voldemort can't hurt Harry because of this protection around him. And it's because so the whole point of Goblet of Fire is Voldemort needs to get close enough to Harry to get his body back. And part of the formula of getting his body back, what's the formula? Do we all remember the formula? Bone of the father unwillingly given, flesh of the servant willingly given, and blood of the enemy forcefully taken. So Harry's blood gets into Voldemort because he uses Harry to remake himself. He has Harry Potter's blood in him. So let me go back to my brushes and let me go to this. And the way I did it here was the way I drew it here is I just drew a bunch of H's. He essentially has little Harry Potter chromosomes. I wonder if there's an easier way to do this. But I wonder what it would look like. I'm just having fun with 3D paint right now. What if we undid that and we did like a spray paint kind of thing? Okay. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so now Voldemort is covered in Harry's blood. So now that Voldemort is covered in Harry's blood, now this, no, I don't know how to reselect things. So now, is there an eraser? There is an eraser. Can I erase this? Oh, I can. Look at that. So now the protection that covered Harry not 3D shapes, 2D shapes. Now the protection that covered Harry you know what? I can do this. Covers both of them. Now it covers both of them. So now Harry was in this bubble that was protected by Lily dying for him. But now that Voldemort has Harry's blood in him, now he is included in that bubble. So now Harry's no longer protected against Voldemort. Like Harry might be protected from like other things, which I didn't even think about till now. But he's no longer protected from Voldemort because now they're both under the protection of Lily because they both have the same blood. But Voldemort makes things very complicated in doing that because what he didn't realize was that he has a piece of himself inside Harry. How do I want this? Is the way I did it. Not watercolor. Marker. I'm going to do green. So Harry has a piece of Voldemort inside him. So that made things very difficult. I even have arrows there that say, blood for going into Voldemort and Horcrux going into Harry. And they both have the same wand cores, too, which makes things kind of interesting. But Voldemort essentially made things very complicated because he didn't realize that Harry has a Horcrux inside him. But this is sort of how Dumbledore explains how it's possible for Voldemort to kill Harry all of a sudden. It's because he has Harry's blood inside of him. That's why. I feel like there's more to the chart too, but that's kind of all that I have right here. Harry is a Horcrux, which means... Oh! Doesn't that explain why Harry can come back from the dead? Yes! Yes, that's right. That's why I did this. This also explains why Harry can come back from the dead. See, when Voldemort kills Harry, he kills the Horcrux inside him. But because Voldemort is alive, Harry is able to come back. The way that Harry tethers Voldemort to life with the Horcrux inside him, Voldemort does the exact same thing for Harry, tethering Harry to life because he has Harry's blood in him. Harry continues to live when Voldemort dies because Harry no longer has Voldemort inside him. He no longer has that connection to Voldemort anymore. Also, it also explains something else. Neither can live while the other survives. It also kind of explains that. Neither can live while the other survives. It doesn't just mean that one has to kill the other, the way that Harry says in the movie. It's actually more complicated than that. It's not just one has to kill the other. It's while one is alive, the other can be alive too, sort of thing. Neither can live while the other survives. It means both of them have to die, is what it means. It doesn't just mean one has to kill the other, it means both of them have to die one way or another. If Harry were to just die, it wouldn't be good enough. Voldemort has to die too. It's just Harry's the only one that can be... I don't know why Harry's the only one that can be alive, but anyway, that also explains that a little bit. That neither can live while the other survives. It means literally neither can live. Both of them have to die. It doesn't mean both of them have to stay dead, but both of them have to die in one way or another. So, yes, that is my fun chart that I should save and pull up whenever we talk about this. Okay, I'll figure out how to save this. Let me put it back on me. I can just exit and then it'll be like, do you want to save? Yes, please. Okay, what are we going to title this? Neither can live. That's what we're going to title it. Okay. Awesome. Fun stuff. Okay. But yeah, I found that chart and I thought that was super fun. Okay, so also what makes Goblet of Fire interesting is that it's part of the Harry Potter pyramid that I like to talk about, that maybe I should bring that up as well since we're talking about it. Documents. All the way at the bottom. Harry Potter pyramid. I will frequently talk about the Harry Potter pyramid, which is something that I learned in my special topics Harry Potter class in high school. Yes, the Harry Potter pyramid. What you have here is you have Harry Potter books that have remarkably similar elements to each other because they kind of mimic each other. They're connected in some way. So we have, the 3 points of the triangle are all connected. Sorcerer's Stone, Goblet of Fire, and Deathly Hallows. They all have similarities in them. They all have dragons. They all have a significant encounter with Voldemort. They all have Ollivander in them significantly, and there's a bunch of them. I can't think of them on the top of my head, but I'll go through them as we go on. But I will bring that up constantly, and these books have a lot in common as well, and so they're connected across the pyramid. But I will talk about Goblet of Fire and how it's particularly connected to Sorcerer's Stone and Deathly Hallows. Okay. All right. Are we going to read now? Okay, let's see. I also want to start by saying I've read this book 7 times. I keep notches in my books that I reread so that I can keep track of how many times I've read them, because it's fun. I've read this book 7 times. All right. I think we are all set. Well, first of all, we're going to be reading Chapter 1 and 2. Chapter 1 is the Riddle House. And it is... What a start. What a start to this book. It is probably the second most boring chapter in all of Harry Potter, in my opinion. The first Harry Potter, the most boring chapter in any Harry Potter book ever, in my opinion, is Chapter 1 of Half-Blood Prince, which is the other minister. It's just Fudge talking to the Prime Minister, the Muggle Prime Minister. It's just like, I'm not interested in this at all. But this is the second most boring chapter, so here we go. But that just means, besides from the most boring chapter, they only get better. So I will read now. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling. To Peter Rowling, in memory of Mr. Ridley and the Susan Sladen who helped Harry out of his cupboard. Peter Rowling. I don't know who that is. Should I know who that is? I don't know who Peter Rowling is. Is it? It can't be her dad, is it? It is her dad. Oh. I thought her and her dad were estranged. I guess not. Wow. Oh, good. Let's see. Yeah, they stopped speaking to each other. Yeah, in 2003. Yeah. They stopped speaking in 2003. So then why did she dedicate a book to him? This book was published in 2000, so maybe that wasn't a thing then. Anyway. In memory of Mr. Ridley and to Susan Sladen, who helped Harry out of his cupboard. I think those are... Here, I'm gonna write who these people are. This is Dad. She doesn't include him in the dedication in Deathly Hallows, to be fair, so... I wonder why. I don't know. I'm really, really nosy. Okay. Okay. I don't know if I can figure out who that is. Gotcha. Mr. Ridley, Harry Potter. Who is Mr. Ridley? Ronald Ridley, an old family friend of the Rowlings. Oh, the man's name was the inspiration for Ron Weasley's name. Interesting. I like to know these things. Maybe it's in her blood of the father. Maybe it's her blood of the father. What are you talking about? I don't know. The way you worded that, Julie, was weird. I don't know what you're trying to say. In memory. Oh. Wait, no. Are you talking about the formula for coming back to life? Why she dedicated a book to her father if they're estranged? Well, I mean, like, yeah, they weren't estranged when she wrote the book, so, but I think I see what you're trying to say. And it's not blood of the father, it's bone of the father, but I think I see what you were trying to do. Okay, so Mr. Ridley is Ron, family friend. I'll just put friend. And Susan Sladen. Which is probably yeah. Oh, Susan Sladen was a woman who used to look after Jessica while she wrote the Harry Potter books. Jessica is J.K. Rowling's first daughter, who's about my age, actually. Okay, all right. So that's all cleared up. That mystery is solved. Okay. Now that we're like an hour into the stream, let's read. Chapter 1. The Riddle House. The villagers of Little Hangleton still called it the Riddle House, even though it had been many years since the Riddle family had lived there. It stood on a hill overlooking the village, some of its windows boarded, tiles missing from its roof, and ivy spreading unchecked over its face. Once a fine-looking manor, and easily the largest and grandest building for miles around, the Riddle House was now damp, derelict, and unoccupied. The Little Hangletons all agreed that the old house was creepy. Half a century ago, something strange and horrible had happened there. Something that the older inhabitants of the village still liked to discuss when topics for gossip were scarce. The story had been picked over so many times and had been embroidered in so many places that nobody was quite sure. Embroidered. That's an interesting way to use that word, embroidered. Interesting word choice. But nobody was quite sure what the truth was anymore. Every version of the tale, however, started in the same place, 50 years before, at daybreak on a fine summer's morning, when the Riddle House had still been well kept and impressive. A maid had entered the drawing room to find all 3 riddles dead. The maid had run screaming down the hill into the village and roused as many people as he could. Lying there with their eyes wide open, cold as ice, still in the din of things. The police were summoned, and the whole of Little Hangleton had seethed with shocked curiosity and ill-disguised excitement. Nobody wasted their breath pretending to feel very sad about the riddles, for they had been most unpopular. Elderly Mr. and Mrs. Riddle had been rich, snobbish, and rude, and their grown-up son Tom had been, if anything, worse. Interesting. All the villagers cared about was the identity of their murderer, for plainly 3 apparently healthy people did not all drop dead of natural causes on the same night. Yeah. I wonder how things would have been different if Tom Riddle had been a good guy. Had been a good person. Thing is, Voldemort probably wouldn't have turned out the way that he did. He didn't necessarily have to be in love with Voldemort's mom, but he still would have cared for the kid. But even when he was no longer under her spell, he didn't care about his kid at all. Had no care for him whatsoever. So he's probably partly the reason why Voldemort ended up the way that he did. The Hanged Man, the village pub, did a roaring trade that night. The whole village seemed to have turned out to discuss the murders. They were rewarded for leaving their firesides when the riddles cook arrived dramatically in their midst and announced to the suddenly silent pub that a man called Frank Bryce had just been arrested. "Frank!" cried several people. "Never!" Frank Bryce was the Riddle's gardener. He lived alone in a rundown cottage in the grounds of the Riddle House. Frank had come back from the war with a very stiff leg and a great dislike of crowds and loud noises, and had been working for the Riddles ever since. There was a rush to buy the cook drinks and hear more details. "Always thought he was odd," she told the eagerly listening villagers after her fourth sherry. "Unfriendly-like. I'm sure if I've offered him a cuppa once, I've offered it 100 times. Never wanted to mix, he didn't." "Ah, now," said a woman at the bar, "he had a hard war, Frank. He likes the quiet life. There's no reason to. Who else had a key to the back door, then?" barked the cook. "There's been a spare key hanging in the gardener's cottage far back as I can remember. Nobody forced the door last night. No broken windows. All Frank had to do was creep up to the big house while we was all sleeping." The villagers exchanged dark looks. "I always thought he had a nasty look about him, right enough," grunted a man at the bar. "What turned him funny, if you ask me?" said the landlord. "Told you I wouldn't like to get on the wrong side of Frank, didn't I, Dot?" said an excited woman in the corner. "Horrible temper," said Dot, nodding fervently. "I remember when he was a kid." By the following morning, hardly anyone in Little Hangleton doubted that Frank Bryce had killed the Riddles. But over in the neighboring town of Great Hangleton, that's such a thing in England. On the one hand, they're very imaginative when it comes to naming things. Elephant and Castle, Bath. Those are the only two weird city names that I can think of, but there's plenty of weird names, plenty of weird places. But then they have places like that. They have Little Hangleton and Great Hangleton. Right next to each other. That's not confusing at all. But over in the neighboring town of Great Hangleton, in the dark and dingy police station, Frank was stubbornly repeating again and again that he was innocent, and that the only person he had seen near the house on the day of the Riddle's deaths had been a teenage boy, a stranger, dark-haired and pale. Nobody else in the village had seen any such boy, and the police were quite sure that Frank had invented him. Then, just when things were looking very serious for Frank, the report on the Riddles' bodies came back and changed everything. Yeah, they've got nothing on him. They can't even explain how he did it, because he didn't do it. The police had never read an odder report. Why can't I read today? Read slowly. Use your brain. A team of doctors had examined the bodies and had concluded that none of the Riddles had been poisoned, stabbed, shot, strangled, suffocated, or, as far as they could tell, harmed at all. In fact, the report continued in a tone of unmistakable bewilderment. The Riddles all appeared to be in perfect health, apart from the fact that they were all dead. Yeah. So this is the first book where we get a better understanding of what the Avada Kedavra curse does, the killing curse. We've never even heard the term, and I don't even think we've even heard the term killing curse. All we know is that Voldemort killed people. The books up to this point have never specified exactly how they killed people, how he killed people. And now we're getting a full description of it because it's becoming important now, because we're going to learn about the unforgivable curses. And the killing curse of Avada Kedavra is one of them. Probably the most unforgivable. Yeah. The doctors did note, as though determined to find something wrong with the bodies, that each of the Riddles had a look of terror upon his or her face. But as the frustrated police said, whoever heard of 3 people being frightened to death? You can actually die of fright. But I imagine it's extremely unlikely for three healthy people to die of fright in one night. I think that's highly unlikely. So improbable, it might as well be impossible. As there was no proof that the Riddles had been murdered at all, the police were forced to let Frank go. The Riddles were buried in the Little Hangleton churchyard, and their graves remained objects of curiosity for a while. To everyone's surprise, and amid a cloud of suspicion, Frank Bryce returned to his cottage on the grounds of the Riddle House. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, he killed them, and I don't care what the police say, said Dot and the Hanged Man, and if he had any decency he'd leave here, knowing as how we knows he did it. But Frank did not leave. He stayed to tend the garden for the next family who lived in the Riddle House, and then the next, for neither family stayed long. Perhaps it was partly because of Frank that the new owners said there was a nasty feeling about the place, which, in the absence of inhabitants, started to fall into disrepair. Every time Voldemort does something in a particular place, it's never the same afterwards. Whenever Voldemort affects something, it's never quite the same. I just think about how Voldemort wanted to apply for the Defense Against the Dark Arts job when he graduated from Hogwarts. Ever since then, they could not keep a Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Ever since he killed his family at the Riddle House, no one can stay at the Riddle House because it feels differently. It's haunted, if you will. Is there anything else like that? Has Voldemort done anything else? Any other place that seems to be affected by him? Let me know in the comments if you think of anything. The wealthy man who owned the Riddle House these days neither lived there nor put it to any use. They said in the village that he kept it for tax reasons. That's sketchy AF. Tax reasons, huh? Though nobody was very clear what these might be. Anyway. The wealthy owner continued to pay Frank to do the gardening, however. Frank was nearing his 77th birthday now. I wonder if that's significant, 77. Very deaf, his bad legs stiffer than ever, but could be seen pottering around the flower beds in fine weather, even though the weeds were starting to creep up on him, try as he might to suppress them. Okay, so if he's 77... Oh, what year is this? This has to be... I don't know. Well, I was trying to think, if he's 77, then how old was he when he was in the war? But I don't think we can really find out unless we know what year this is. And I can't be sure what year this is. I don't know if it's important enough to look up. Yeah, nah, I don't care. Weeds were not the only things Frank had to contend with either. Boys from the village made a habit of throwing stones through the windows of the Riddle House. They rode their bicycles over the lawns Frank worked so hard to keep smooth. Once or twice they broke into the old house for a dare. Ooh, fan fiction idea. That's really cool. Hold on. Fan fiction idea. Yeah. They knew that old Frank's devotion to the house and grounds amounted almost to an obsession, and it amused them to see him limping across the garden, brandishing his stick and yelling croakily at them. Excuse me. Frank, for his part, believed the boys tormented him because they, like their parents and grandparents, thought him a murderer. So when Frank awoke one night in August and saw... It's August now! And saw something very odd up at the old house, he merely assumed that the boys had gone one step further in their attempts to punish him. That's why in the movie, when he looks up at the house and there's a light in the house, he's like, bloody kids. That's why. That's because there's neighborhood boys that like to mess with the house. It was Frank's bad leg that woke him. It was paining him worse than ever in his old age. He got up and limped downstairs into the kitchen with the idea of refilling his hot water bottle to ease the stiffness in his knee. Standing at the sink, filling the kettle, he looked up at the Riddle House and saw lights glimmering in its upper windows. Frank knew at once what was going on. The boys had broken into the house again, and judging by the flickering quality of the light, they had started a fire. Frank had no telephone, and in any case he had deeply mistrusted the police ever since they had taken him in for questioning about the Riddle's deaths. He put down the kettle at once, hurried back upstairs as fast as his bad leg would allow, and was soon back in his kitchen, fully dressed and removing a rusty old key from its hook by the door. He picked up his walking stick, which was propped against the wall, and set off into the night. I got hot again. The front door of the Riddle House bore no sign of being forced, nor did any of the windows. Frank limped around to the back of the house until he reached a door almost completely hidden by ivy, took out the old key, put it into the lock, and opened the door noiselessly. He let himself into the cavernous kitchen. Frank had not entered it for many years. Nevertheless, although it was very dark, he remembered where the door into the hall was, and he groped his way toward it, his nostrils full of the smell of decay, ears pricked for any sound of footsteps or voices from overhead. He reached the hall, which was a little lighter, owing to the large mullioned windows. We looked up what mullioned was in a previous book. Mullioned is the piece of wood or metal that separates different panes of glass in a window. And a mullioned window just means it's a window that's divided up in a bunch of squares. That's all it means. He reached the hall, which was a little lighter owing to the large mullioned windows on either side of the front door, and started to climb the stairs, blessing the dust that lay thick upon the stone, because it muffled the sound of his feet and stick. On the landing, Frank turned right and saw at once where the intruders were. At the very end of the passage, a door stood ajar, and a flickering light shone through the gap, casting a long sliver of gold across the black floor. I love that. Oh, that's such good imagery. Frank edged closer and closer, grasping his walking stick firmly. Several feet from the entrance, he was able to see a narrow slice of the room beyond. The fire, he now saw, had been lit in the grate. This surprised him. Then he stopped moving and listened intently, for a man's voice spoke within the room. It sounded timid and fearful. That's so weird. Sorry. There is a little more in the bottle, my lord, if you are still hungry. He's feeding him like a baby. It's weird. Later, said a second voice. Oh, I was about to say, this is the first time we hear Voldemort speak. It's not actually the first time. We hear him speak in the first one, obviously. And then technically the second one, too. Albeit a past version of himself. It's been a long time since we've heard from Voldemort. Let's put it that way. This too belonged to a man, but it was strangely high-pitched and cold as a sudden blast of icy wind. Something about that voice made the sparse hairs on the back of Frank's neck stand up. Move me closer to the fire, Wormtail. Frank turned his right ear toward the door, the better to hear. There came the clink of a bottle being put down upon some hard surface, and then the dull scraping noise of a heavy chair being dragged across the floor. Frank caught a glimpse of a small man, his back to the door, pushing the chair into place. He was wearing a long black cloak, and there was a bald patch at the back of his head. Then he went out of sight again. So, how did Voldemort survive? Voldemort can't feed himself. He can't move. He can't do anything. He's like an infant. How did he survive between Quirrell and Wormtail is my question. I mean, obviously the Horcruxes, but I want to know exactly how that worked out. Maybe it has something to do with Bertha Jorkins, which will come up later, which I don't remember. I don't remember exactly how she plays into this, but anyway. Where is Nagini? Said the cold voice. I don't know, my lord, said the first voice nervously. She set out to explore the house, I think. You will milk her before we retire, Wormtail, said the second voice. I will need feeding in the night. The journey has tired me greatly. This is so weird. I don't know why it's weird. It's weird to me. It's weird that Wormtail would be nursing Voldemort. It's weird. Also, what's weird, you can milk snakes, which is really odd to me. And, like, it's not, like, I didn't realize this. Like, okay, so... okay. So, the only time I ever heard of milking snakes was from the movie A Series of Unfortunate Events. It's a great movie. Terrible TV show. Great book series. But if you've never seen it, the villain of the film, Count Olaf, he's trying to pretend to be a reptile expert. And so he just, I mean, the rest of the details aren't important, but he's asked by, what is his name? Wow, I can't remember. He's played by Billy Connolly, but I don't remember the character's name. Why can't I remember his name? Is it Uncle Monty? Is that his name? Anyway, he's trying to convince him that he's an expert, and Uncle Monty asks him to milk a snake. And he's played by the talented Jim Carrey, who's like, but the little otters, they're hard to locate. And I'm just like, is this a prank? Like, are you trying to prove he's not an expert by asking him to milk a snake? You can't milk a snake, because I'm thinking they don't have udders. This is weird. No, you do milk snakes, but you milk their teeth, like the poison from their teeth. But I don't understand why you'd want to do that. I mean, I guess not poison. I guess not all snakes are poisonous. I think that's what it means by milking snakes. I'm going to look it up. Because I know you can. Milking snakes for venom. Yes, they have venom. You milk them from their teeth. You can see this right here. Like this. Deadly venom. But is that what Voldemort's drinking? Because that's weird. I'm just saying. That's weird. Oh, whoops. Let me put just me. There we go. But yeah. But you can milk snakes, if you didn't know. But that's what Voldemort's been eating, so yikes. Brow furrowed, Frank inclined his good ears still closer to the door, listening very hard. There was a pause, and then the man called Wormtail spoke again. My lord, may I ask how long we are going to stay here? A week, said the cold voice. Perhaps longer. The place is moderately comfortable, and the plan cannot proceed yet. It would be foolish to act before the Quidditch World Cup is over. Why? And what does he mean by act? What is he attempting to do exactly? I don't know. It'd be foolish to act before the Quidditch World Cup. Like, I mean, I know he's trying to get to Harry, but I can't think of what he's doing in preparation for that. Have we already attacked Mad-Eye Moody? Have we already... There's, like, pieces of the puzzle that I can't remember because I'm mostly familiar with the film, and the film leaves out a bunch of puzzle pieces. So there's a bunch of puzzle pieces in here that I can't think of that he's talking about. Frank inserted a gnarled finger through his ear and rotated it. Owing, no doubt, to a buildup of earwax, he had heard the word Quidditch, which was not a word at all. The Quidditch World Cup, my lord, said Wormtail. Frank dug his finger still more vigorously into his ear. Forgive me, but I do not understand. Why should we wait until the World Cup is over? That's my question. And now it looks like they're going to answer it. Because, fool, at this very moment wizards are pouring into the country from all over the world, and every meddler from the Ministry of Magic will be on duty, on the watch for signs of unusual activity, checking and double-checking identities. They'll be obsessed with security, lest the muggles notice anything. So we wait. Still, I kind of figured that already. I want to know what he wants to do. That's my question. Frank stopped trying to clear out his ear. He had distinctly heard the words Ministry of Magic, Wizards, and Muggles. Plainly, each of these expressions meant something secret, and Frank could think of only two sorts of people who would speak in code, spies and criminals. Frank tightened his hold on his walking stick once more, and listened more closely still. Your lordship is still determined, then? Wormtail said quietly. Certainly I am determined, Wormtail. There was a note of menace in the cold voice now. A slight pause followed, and then Wormtail spoke, the words tumbling from him in a rush, as though he was forcing himself to say this before he lost his nerve. It could be done without Harry Potter, my lord. Another pause, more protracted, which means longer, I'm pretty sure, rather than, well, lasting for a long time is what that means. So the word protracted means lasting a long time. Another pause, more protracted, and then, without Harry Potter? Breathed the second voice softly. I see. My lord, I do not say this out of concern for the boy, said Wormtail, his voice rising sweetly. The boy is nothing to me, nothing at all. It is merely that if we were to use another witch or wizard, any wizard, the thing could be done so much more quickly. If you allow me to leave you for a short while, you know that I can disguise myself most effectively. I could be back here in as little as 2 days with a suitable person. I could use another wizard, said the cold voice softly. That's true. My lord, it makes sense, said Wormtail, sounding thoroughly relieved now. Laying hands on Harry Potter would be so difficult. He is so well protected. And so you volunteer to go and fetch me a substitute? I wonder. Perhaps the task of nursing me has become wearisome for you, Wormtail. Could the suggestion of abandoning the plan be nothing more than an attempt to desert me? My lord, I have no wish to leave you, none at all. Do not lie to me, hissed the second voice. I can always tell, Wormtail. You are regretting that you ever returned to me. I revolt you. I see you flinch when you look at me, feel you shudder when you touch me. No, my devotion to your lordship, your devotion is nothing more than cowardice. You would not be here if you had anywhere else to go. How am I to survive without you, when I need feeding every few hours? Who is to milk Nagini? See, like, how would he survive? I mean, like, he wouldn't die, obviously, but what would happen, you know? But you seem so much stronger, my lord. Liar, breathed the second voice. I am no stronger, and a few days alone would be enough to rob me of the little health I have regained under your clumsy care. Silence! Wormtail, who had been sputtering incoherently, fell silent at once. For a few seconds Frank could hear nothing but the fire crackling. Then the second man spoke once more in a whisper that was almost a hiss. I have my reasons for using the boy, as I have already explained to you, and I will use no other. I have waited 13 years. A few more months will make no difference. As for the protection surrounding the boy, I believe my plan will be effective. All that is needed is a little courage from you, Wormtail. Courage you will find, unless you wish to feel the full extent of Lord Voldemort's wrath. My lord, I must speak, said Wormtail, panic in his voice now. All through our journey I have gone over the plan in my head. My lord, Bertha Jorkins's disappearance will not go unnoticed for long, and if we proceed, if I murder— If, whispered the second voice, if you follow the plan, Wormtail, the Ministry need never know that anyone else has died. You will do it quietly, and without fuss. I only wish that I could do it myself, but in my present condition— Come, Wormtail. One more death, and our path to Harry Potter is clear. I am not asking you to do it alone. By that time, my faithful servant will have rejoined us. All right. Okay, so a lot to unpack in this section right here. Okay, so there's something really important here happening. Okay, so Wormtail says, but if we proceed, if I murder, who is he going to murder? And I was thinking it was Bertha Jorkins. Because it just says Bertha Jorkins' disappearance. It doesn't say her death. But why would they kill her now? Who do they need to kill? I wrote Crouch on the side, because he's another one that dies. But why does Crouch need to be dead? I forget. And of course it has something to do with his son, but I forget exactly how. It's really confusing. The movie really simplifies it a lot. In the movie, they make it look like Barty Crouch figured out that Mad-Eye Moody isn't actually Mad-Eye Moody, and that he was going to tell Dumbledore, and so Mad-Eye Moody, aka Barty Crouch Jr., had to kill him before he told Dumbledore who he really was. But that's not how it happens in the book. And Wormtail doesn't kill Barty Crouch. Barty Crouch Jr. kills Crouch. So then who is Wormtail killing? He says, if we proceed, if I murder, who's he supposed to murder? Maybe it is Bertha Jorkins, because that's who they were talking about right in the sentence beforehand, or in the same sentence even. My lord, Bertha Jorkins' disappearance will not go unnoticed for long, and if we proceed, if I murder... It makes it sound like that's not it, though. It makes it sound like they're hiding it, like it's supposed to be revealed later, and I can't think of who they're talking about. Later, also what's important is later, Voldemort says, come Wormtail, one more death and our path to Harry Potter is clear. Did you know that in the UK version, it doesn't say death, it says obstacle. It doesn't say death, it says obstacle. And I wonder why they changed that, number one. And number two, does that mean they're not actually talking about anyone's death in particular? One more obstacle, and our path to Harry Potter is clear. What? I'm just trying to think. What exactly is Voldemort talking about here? What exactly is he talking about? How is Barty Crouch an obstacle if they're talking about Barty Crouch? What does Bertha Jorkins have to do with this? Which, I'm asking these questions because obviously they're going to get answered in the book, I guess. But the thing is, I've read this book 7 times and I still don't remember the answer. That's why I'm struggling. I've read this book 7 times and I still don't really know the answer. Who is he talking about? Barty Crouch? Why would Barty Crouch be an obstacle? What do they need? They don't kill Mad-Eye Moody. I'm thinking, how does he get to Harry? How does the path need to be clear? He gets to Harry because Barty Crouch Jr. Okay, so Barty Crouch Jr. is currently in Azkaban, right? In the movie, he's not in Azkaban anymore. And it's never, ever explained how he even gets out of Azkaban, unfortunately. Yeah, that's never explained. How did he get... Now that I think about that, that sounds preposterous. How could they have Barty Crouch... Yeah, Dumbledore never explained why Barty Crouch Jr. isn't in Azkaban anymore in the movie. And they clearly established that no one has ever escaped Azkaban except Sirius Black. And now all of a sudden Barty Crouch Jr. can escape Azkaban too? They never explain it. They do make it clear that he goes to Azkaban, but they never explain how he escapes. Weird. That never occurred to me before. So, Barty Crouch Jr., he's in prison. And he gets out of prison. Because Barty Crouch gets him out of prison. Barty Crouch... I forget exactly how he gets him out of prison, but he does. He somehow replaces his son with his wife who is dying. Because Dementors can't see. They can feel. That's how they move around. That's how they navigate the world, is they feel. And so they can't tell between two people if they have the same feelings. Barty Crouch Jr., he was dying in prison. And Barty Crouch was already losing his wife. He was sad. He wanted his son, I'm thinking. So he took his son out of prison and somehow tricked the Dementors. He took his son out of prison and he replaced his son with his wife, who was already dying. And so they felt the same in spirit. So the Dementors didn't notice a difference. I think that's what happened. And then when she dies, they bury her thinking that he's Barty Crouch Jr. And then Barty Crouch keeps Barty Crouch Jr. Like secretly in the basement sort of thing, with Winky the house elf watching over him. I don't understand how he's an obstacle. What obstacle or death or whatever are they talking about? They need Mad-Eye Moody. His faith, and that's who he's talking about. His faithful servant, he's talking about Barty Crouch Jr. is who he's talking about. Barty Crouch Jr. breaks away. He finds a way to break away at the Quidditch World Cup. I don't know if Voldemort's expecting that. How would he even communicate with him? I don't even know. How would he even know about Barty Crouch Jr.? How would Barty Crouch Jr. even get in contact with Voldemort? I don't know. I don't understand. Barty Crouch Jr. needs to attack Mad-Eye Moody, capture him, become Mad-Eye Moody, and then become, the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor at Hogwarts, and then put Harry's name in the Goblet of Fire and make sure that he makes it to the end. I don't know. I don't understand how Barty Crouch is an obstacle, if that's who it's talking about. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they'll explain further. I'm going to keep reading because I don't know the answer. And hopefully the book will explain. All right. I am a faithful servant, said Wormtail, the merest trace of sullenness in his voice. Wormtail, I need somebody with brains. Somebody whose loyalty has never wavered. And you, unfortunately, fulfill neither requirement. I found you, said Wormtail, and there was definitely a sulky edge to his voice now. I was the one who found you. I brought you, Bertha Jorkins. That is true, said the second man, sounding amused. A stroke of brilliance I would not have thought possible from you, Wormtail. Though, if truth be told, you were not aware how useful she would be when you caught her, were you? Yeah, Bertha Jorkins was caught for information. I thought she might be useful, my lord. Liar, said the second voice again, the cruel voice amusement more pronounced than ever. However, I do not deny that information was invaluable. Without it, I could never have formed our plan, and for that you will have your reward, Wormtail. I will allow you to perform an essential task for me, one that many of my followers would give their right hands to perform. Oh, he's funny. Okay, so Bertha Jorkins, she tells him about the Triwizard Tournament. That is the big piece of information that Voldemort didn't have. The Triwizard Tournament is happening this year. And somehow that makes Voldemort think, I could use that to get at Harry Potter. I don't know how he forms that plan from that knowledge, but that's essentially the information he's talking about, I believe. Really, my lord? What? Wormtail sounded terrified again. Ah, Wormtail, you don't want me to spoil the surprise? Your part will come at the very end. But I promise you, you will have the honor of being just as useful as Bertha Jorkins. You... Wormtail's voice suddenly sounded hoarse, as though his mouth had gone very dry. You are going to kill me too? So Bertha's already dead. So that's not who they're talking about when Wormtail says, if we proceed, if I murder. They're not talking about Bertha Jorkins. She's already dead. So are they talking about Barty Crouch? I don't know. I thought it was Barty Crouch Jr. who kills Barty Crouch, not Wormtail. What? I don't know. This is too confusing. Maybe J.K. Rowling was a little confused. Maybe she didn't write it correctly. Maybe there's an error. Again, this version isn't worded exactly the same way as the original manuscript. For whatever reason, I don't know. I don't understand. I wonder if I can find a video on that. Can I find somebody to explain this? Maybe. Here. We'll put one more death. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. I wonder if it'll give me any information on that. If there's any discussion. One more death. The fandom Harry Potter wiki. Oh. It looks like other people are having the same discussion. It's been troubling me for years. Basically, you asked the same question 5 years ago. I think it's Moody. Oh, look at this. One more death. Can anybody help me figure this out? We're really getting into it today. Like the books just get more complex as you go. So let me pull up the fandom here for us so you can see what I've got here. Can anybody help me figure this out? Because this has been bugging me for years. While Voldemort is talking to Wormtail at the beginning of Goblet of Fire, he says, "One more death and our path to Harry Potter is clear." Does anyone know who that one more death is? I've thought of a few candidates, but none of them really make sense. Harry, doesn't really make sense to say that killing Harry will make the path to Harry clear. Cedric, Voldemort, and Wormtail don't know about him at this point, and killing him was never part of the plan. Moody, they were always planning to keep him alive to use for the Polyjuice Potion. Crouch Sr., they originally planned to keep him alive under the Imperious Curse to avoid drawing attention to themselves. They only killed him because he started breaking through their curse. Oh, that's right. Okay. So, I don't know if any of these people know. It may very well be an oversight. Oh, yeah, that's right. True, but there have been similar mistakes before. It may have been an oversight. I guess Rowling might have put the dialogue in because it works well for the scene to establish to Frank that he's a murderer. Mistakes have happened before. There is the infamous wand order error regarding which of Harry's parents came out during Priory Incantatem. Yeah, there was a correction to the actual manuscript that happened, in which originally, because it goes from earliest to latest. So, no, latest to earliest. Frank comes out of the wand first, and then it should be Cedric and then Frank, and then it should be Lily and then James, but in the original manuscript it was James and then Lily, and that's the wrong order. They have fixed it. Like in any new copy that you get, their order has been changed, I believe. They did finally correct that one. Yes, right here. Actually, Voldemort first says one more obstacle removed and then one more curse, and that is a reference either to freeing Barty Crouch Jr. or possibly in the capture of Aleister Moody. Okay. From reading this and other similar posts, it certainly seems like Moody with a slightly different edition change. So the edition changed. Yeah, the US version is death and the UK version is obstacle. Yeah, so there is reasonable confusion. Obstacle, so it doesn't mean somebody else has to die. It means there's one more task they need to do. Which I think it just means, it says one more death, or obstacle if you will, and our path to Harry Potter is clear. I'm not asking you to do it alone. By that time, my faithful servant will have rejoined us. So he could be talking about Barty Crouch Jr. escaping from his father. And maybe that's what he means by death. Maybe he expects Barty Crouch Jr. to kill Barty Crouch Sr. Maybe that's what he expects. And that's why he said death. It doesn't necessarily mean he's going to kill him, just one more death in general. But still, who is Wormtail supposed to murder? That's my question. And if we proceed, if I murder, who is he supposed to murder? Is my question. So I guess that's the same question. Which doesn't really fix the situation of whether or not... Why not Dumbledore? Dumbledore's not really an obstacle in this one. Right. Yeah. View newer replies. Okay. No, that's not it. American translator is the same language. Why did they need a translator? If we believe that the American translator just made a mistake, then I've got an idea. What if the obstacle was to get Voldy's body back, if that was the thing that had to be done, because we all know that Voldy believed much in the prophecy, so that he thought that he had to kill the boy by himself, and he couldn't do that without a body, and that isn't easy. It can come up problems. Sure, at that time he resurrects, he's already has Harry with him, but maybe he meant that he got his body back and then the path was clear. That makes sense! Okay, so this person is explaining it this way. One more obstacle in our path to Harry Potter is clear. He doesn't mean in our path to get Harry's blood so I can come back is clear. He's saying the path to killing Harry is clear. Killing Harry is the goal. But he can't kill Harry until he uses Harry's blood to come back. That's what he's talking about. So he's like, one more thing I need to do in order to kill Harry Potter. And that one more thing is to get his body back using Harry's blood. Maybe that's what he's talking about. Very possible. Very possible. That was a good idea. I thought of something else too when I was explaining that. I can't remember what it was. One more death, one more obstacle. Could it be death? No. Yeah, I don't know. But interesting. Interesting conversation. Interesting. Glad I looked that up. I'm so glad. Oh, nope. I keep forgetting to change it back. There we go. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I would like to get information from J.K. Rowling on that, but I don't know. I feel like people have probably asked her already, or should have asked her already, or whatever. Okay, so let's see. Wormtail, said the cold voice sickly. Why would I kill you? I killed Bertha because I had to. She was fit for nothing after my questioning, quite useless. In any case, awkward questions would have been asked if she had gone back to the Ministry with the news that she had met you on her holidays. Wizards who are supposed to be dead would do well not to run into Ministry of Magic witches at wayside inns. Wormtail muttered something so quietly that Frank could not hear it, but it made the second man laugh, an entirely mirthless laugh, cold as his speech. We could have modified her memory. But memory charms can be broken by a powerful wizard, as I've proved when I questioned her. It would be an insult to her memory not to use the information I extracted from her, Wormtail. So her memory was already modified, and that's how he accessed it, because he broke through the memory modification. Why was Bertha Jorkins under a memory modification charm? Why was that a thing? Out in the corridor, Frank suddenly became aware that the hand gripping his walking stick was slippery with sweat. The man with the cold voice had killed a woman. He was talking about it without any kind of remorse, with amusement. He was dangerous, a madman, and he was planning more murders. This boy, Harry Potter, whoever he was in danger. Frank knew what he must do. Now, if ever, was the time to go to the police. He would creep out of the house and head straight for the telephone box in the village. A police telephone box? Oh my goodness, again? Okay. More on this discussion coming up in a second. Okay. A police box? Smiley face? But the cold voice was speaking again, and Frank remained where he was, frozen to the spot, listening with all his might. one more murder. It's actually not murder in the UK version. In the UK version, it's curse. This is nuts. One more curse. Could it be the Imperious Curse? Could it be, Mad-Eye Moody? It could be, I suppose. It could be Mad-Eye Moody. I don't know. If we think about it in terms of killing Harry Potter, that doesn't make as much sense, does it? One more curse? One more curse. One more murder, my faithful servant at Hogwarts. Harry Potter is as good as mine, Wormtail. So that one could be about Mad-Eye Moody. It is decided. There will be no more argument, but quiet. I think I hear Nagini. And the second man's voice changed. He started making noises such as Frank had never heard before. He was hissing and spitting without drawing breath. Frank thought he must be having some sort of fit or seizure. And then Frank heard movement behind him in the dark passageway. He turned to look and found himself paralyzed with fright. Something was slithering toward him along the dark corridor floor, and as it drew nearer to the sliver of firelight, he realized with a thrill of terror that it was a gigantic snake, at least 12 feet long. Horrified, transfixed, Frank stared at its undulating body, cut a wide, curving track through the thick dust on the floor. Coming closer and closer. What was he to do? The only means of escape was into the room where two men sat plotting murder. Yet, if he stayed where he was, the snake would surely kill him. But before he had made his decision, the snake was level with him, and then, incredibly, miraculously, it was passing. It was following the spitting, hissing noises made by the cold voice beyond the door, and in seconds the tip of its diamond-patterned tail had vanished through the gap. There was sweat on Frank's forehead now, and the hand on the walking stick was trembling. Inside the room, the cold voice was continuing to hiss, and Frank was visited by a strange idea, an impossible idea. This man could talk to snakes. Frank didn't understand what was going on. He wanted more than anything to be back in his bed with his hot water bottle. The problem was that his legs didn't seem to want to move. As he stood there shaking and trying to master himself, the cold voice switched abruptly to English again. Nagini has interesting news, Wormtail, it said. Indeed, my lord, said Wormtail. Indeed, yes, said the voice. According to Nagini, there is an old muggle standing right outside this room, listening to every word we say. Frank didn't have a chance to hide himself. There were footsteps, and then the door of the room was flung wide open. A short, balding man with graying hair, a pointed nose, and small, watery eyes stood before Frank, a mixture of fear and alarm in his face. Invite him inside, Wormtail. Where are your manners? Excuse me. The cold voice was coming from the ancient armchair before the fire, but Frank couldn't see the speaker. The snake, on the other hand, was curled up on the rotting hearthrug like some horrible travesty of a pet dog. Travesty? I want to look up travesty. Travesty. False, absurd, or distorted. Wormtail beckoned Frank into the room. Though still deeply shaken, Frank took a firmer grip upon his walking stick and limped over the threshold. The fire was the only source of light in the room. It cast long, spidery shadows upon the walls. Frank stared at the back of the armchair. The man inside it seemed to be even smaller than his servant, for Frank couldn't even see the back of his head. You heard everything, Muggle? Said the cold voice. What's that you're calling me? Said Frank defiantly, for now that he was inside the room, now that the time had come for some sort of action, he felt braver. It had always been so, in the war. I am calling you a Muggle, said the voice coolly. It means that you are not a wizard. I don't know what you mean by wizard, said Frank, his voice growing steadier. All I know is I've heard enough to interest the police tonight. I have. You've done murder, and you're planning more. And I'll tell you this, too, he added on a sudden inspiration. My wife knows I'm up here, and if I don't come back... Wow. What a gentleman. What a man. So, just... what a brave dude. Like, seriously. You have no wife, said the cold voice very quietly. Nobody knows you are here. You told nobody that you were coming. Do not lie to Lord Voldemort, Muggle, for he knows. He always knows. Voldemort has, he can do legitimacy, which is the ability to read minds, but it's not just that. I think it's also part of the snake that's in him. How, like, snakes can have, like, a sense about things, especially, they can sense things with the tip of their tongue, and I think that's kind of where he gets that from. Is that right? Said Frank roughly. Lord, is it? Well, I don't think much of your manners, my lord. Turn round and face me like a man, why don't you? Whew. But I am not a man, Muggle, said the cold voice, barely audible now over the crackling in the flames. I am much, much more than a man. However, why not? I will face you. Voldemort, Wormtail, come turn my chair around. The servant gave a whimper. You heard me, Wormtail. Slowly, with his face screwed up, as though he would rather have done anything than approach his master and the hearthrug where the snake lay, the small man walked forward and began to turn the chair. The snake lifted its ugly triangular head and hissed slightly as the legs of the chair snagged on its rug. And then the chair was facing Frank, and he saw what was sitting in it. His walking stick fell to the floor with a clatter. He opened his mouth and let out a scream. He was screaming so loudly that he never heard the words the thing in the chair spoke as it raised a wand. There was a flash of green light, a rushing sound, and Frank Bryce crumpled. He was dead before he hit the floor. 200 miles away, the boy called Harry Potter woke with a start. And that's the end of chapter 1, and it took me like 2 hours to read it because we had so much to talk about. All right, well, now is my intermission. Now is the time where I take a 15-minute break, and we will come back and read chapter 2. How long is chapter 2? This stream is already much longer than I'm accustomed to. Oh, it's not that long. It's barely anything. It'll be fine. All right, so now is a good time to get a snack, get a drink, use the restroom, just do whatever you gotta do. Those are the things that I generally like to do. I also do the dishes, if you want to know. I use this time to do the dishes. Okay. Also, if you haven't already, please leave a like on the stream or on the video, depending on when you're watching this. If you're not a subscriber, become a subscriber and turn on notifications so you can be notified when I upload and when I go live. I go live every Friday and Saturday, and the time changes. If you want to know what my streaming schedule is going to be, follow me on Twitter, link in the description. Also linked in the description is my Instagram, my TikTok, and my Patreon. If you'd like to support me, or if you would like to read my writing that I post on there, you can follow me there. Yeah, and I will see you in 15 minutes. Welcome back. All right, now we're going to start chapter 2, The Scar. Harry lay flat. Oh, I wanted to say something too. I think the last chapter was the first time that we have a chapter that Harry's not really in. Usually, because Harry's the main character, we see everything through Harry's point of view. This is the first time the last chapter was the first time where he wasn't really there, where it was definitely a narrator talking about something somewhere else rather than a narrator talking about how things are happening through Harry's eyes. I believe that's the first time. Except maybe if you count chapter 1 of the first book. But Harry's still, like, there, even though he's a baby. I guess you could count that, I guess. Anyway. Harry lay flat on his back, breathing hard as though he had been running. He had awoken from a vivid dream with his hands pressed over his face. Oh, and this is the first official Voldemort dream that he has. As in which he can see what Voldemort sees in his sleep. This is the first, like, I think he's had moments where he's seen Voldemort, I think, or at least it kind of hints at that in the first book, where he has dreams about Quirrell and what's under his turban. But otherwise, that hasn't really happened till now. The old scar on his forehead, which was shaped like a bolt of lightning, was burning beneath his fingers as though someone had just pressed a white-hot wire to his skin. He sat up, one hand still on his scar, the other reaching out in the darkness for his glasses, which were on the bedside table. He put them on, and his bedroom came into clearer focus, lit by a faint, misty orange light that was flickering through the curtains from the street lamp outside the window. Harry ran his fingers over the scar again. It was still painful. He turned on the lamp beside him, scrambled out of bed, crossed the room, opened his wardrobe, and peered into the mirror on the inside of the door. A skinny boy of 14 looked back at him, his bright green eyes puzzled under his untidy black hair. He examined the lightning bolt scar of his reflection more closely. It looked normal, but it was still stinging. Harry tried to recall what he had been dreaming about before he had awoken. It had seemed so real. There had been 2 people he knew, and one he didn't. He concentrated hard, frowning, trying to remember. The dim picture of a darkened room came to him. There had been a snake on a hearthrug, a small man called Peter, nicknamed Wormtail, and a cold, high voice, the voice of Lord Voldemort. Harry felt as though an ice cube had slipped down into his stomach at the very thought. He closed his eyes tightly and tried to remember what Voldemort had looked like, but it was impossible. All Harry knew was that at the moment when Voldemort's chair had spun around and he, Harry, had seen what was sitting in it, he had felt a spasm of horror which had awoken him. Or had that been the pain in his scar? So Harry's not seeing it from Voldemort's perspective. So then what perspective is he seeing it from? Wouldn't he have to see it through Voldemort's perspective? And who had the old man been? For there had definitely been an old man. Harry had watched him fall to the ground. It was all becoming confused. Harry put his face in his hands, blocking out his bedroom, trying to hold on to the picture of that dimly lit room. But it was like trying to keep water in his cupped hands. Ooh, that's good imagery. That's really good. That's a really good description of that. The details were now trickling away as fast as he tried to hold on to them. Voldemort and Wormtail had been talking about someone they had killed, though Harry could not remember the name, and they had been plotting to kill someone else. Him. Is he the one? Is he the one they keep talking about? Is he the one more death? Harry took his face out of his hands, opened his eyes, and stared around his bedroom as though expecting to see something unusual there. As it happened, there were an extraordinary number of unusual things in this room. A large wooden trunk stood open at the foot of his bed, revealing a cauldron, broomstick, black robes, and assorted spellbooks. Rolls of parchment littered the part of his desk that was not taken up by the large empty cage in which his snowy owl, Hedwig, usually perched. On the floor beside his bed, a book lay open. Harry had been reading it before he fell asleep last night. The pictures in this book were all moving. Men in bright orange robes were zooming in and out of sight on broomsticks, throwing a red ball to one another. Harry walked over to the book, picked it up, and watched one of the wizards score a spectacular goal by putting the ball through a 50-foot high hoop. Then he snapped the book shut. Even Quidditch, in Harry's opinion the best sport in the world, couldn't distract him at the moment. He placed Flying with the Cannons on his bedside table, crossed to the window, and drew back the curtains to survey the street below. Privet Drive looked exactly as a respectable suburban street would be expected to look in the early hours of Saturday morning. All the curtains were closed. As far as Harry could see through the darkness, there wasn't a living creature in sight, not even a cat. And yet, Harry went restlessly back to bed and sat down on it, running a finger over his scar again. It wasn't the pain that bothered him. Harry was no stranger to pain and injury. He had lost all the bones from his right arm once, and had them painfully regrown in a night. I remember what he's worried about. He's worried that Voldemort is nearby. That's the only thing that every time his scar had hurt previously, it meant that Voldemort was nearby. So he thinks that Voldemort's nearby. He doesn't know what we know. See, I didn't think of this when I first read it because I know that Harry's scar doesn't always hurt when just because Harry's scar is hurting doesn't mean Voldemort is nearby. It could also be that Voldemort is feeling something particularly emotional, or when he has a dream about Voldemort, his scar can hurt. But Harry doesn't know that yet, so he's kind of freaking out a little bit. The same arm had been pierced by a venomous foot-long fang not long afterward. Only last year Harry had fallen 50 feet from an airborne broomstick. He was used to bizarre accidents and injuries. They were unavoidable if you attended Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry and had a knack for attracting a lot of trouble. Yeah, right. Hogwarts is dangerous for children. No, the thing that was bothering Harry was that the last time his scar had hurt him, it had been because Voldemort had been close by. But Voldemort couldn't be here now. The idea of Voldemort lurking in Privet Drive was absurd. Impossible. I read that incorrectly. Let me read that again, because there's a comma here. Commas are important. But Voldemort couldn't be here now. The idea of Voldemort lurking in Privet Drive was absurd. Impossible. Harry listened closely to the silence around him. Was he half expecting to hear the creak of a stair or the swish of a cloak? And then he jumped slightly as he heard his cousin Dudley give a tremendous grunting snore from the next room. Harry shook his head mentally. He was being stupid. There was no one in the house with him except Uncle Vernon, Aunt Petunia, and Dudley, and they were plainly still asleep, their dreams untroubled and painless. Asleep was the way Harry liked the Dursleys best. It wasn't as though they were ever any help to him awake. Uncle Vernon, Aunt Petunia, and Dudley were Harry's only living relatives. Once again, as happens at the beginning of every book, we kind of get a recap of who the characters are and who we are and why we're here. And that will actually peter out. I think this is the last book where we really do get a recap. I think in Order of the Phoenix, it's just assumed that you've read the books before and you know who everybody is. There might be a little bit of a recap, but it's not to the extent that we get here. They were muggles who hated and despised magic in any form, which meant that Harry was about as welcome in their house as dry rot. They had explained away Harry's long absences at Hogwarts over the last 3 years by telling everyone that he went to St. Brutus's Secure Center for Incurably Criminal Boys. They knew perfectly well that, as an underage wizard, Harry wasn't allowed to use magic outside Hogwarts, but they were still apt to blame him for anything that went wrong about the house. Harry had never been able to confide in them or tell them anything about his life in the wizarding world. The very idea of going to them when they awoke and telling them about his scar hurting him and about his worries about Voldemort was laughable. And yet it was because of Voldemort that Harry had come to live with the Dursleys in the first place. If it hadn't been for Voldemort, Harry would not have had the lightning scar on his forehead. If it hadn't been for Voldemort, Harry would still have had parents. Harry had been a year old the night that Voldemort, the most powerful dark wizard for a century, a wizard who had been gaining power steadily for 11 years, arrived at his house and killed his father and mother. Voldemort had then turned his wand on Harry. He had performed the curse that had disposed of many full-grown witches and wizards in his steady rise to power, and incredibly, it had not worked. Instead of killing the small boy, the curse had rebounded upon Voldemort. Harry had survived with nothing but a lightning-shaped cut on his forehead, and Voldemort had been reduced to something barely alive. His powers gone, his life almost extinguished, Voldemort had fled. The terror in which the secret community of witches and wizards had lived for so long had lifted, Voldemort's followers had disbanded, and Harry Potter had become famous. It had been enough of a shock for Harry to discover, on his 11th birthday, that he was a wizard. It had been even more disconcerting to find out that everyone in the hidden wizarding world knew his name. Harry had arrived at Hogwarts to find that heads turned and whispers followed him wherever he went. But he was used to it now. At the end of this summer, he would be starting his 4th year at Hogwarts, and Harry was already counting the days until he would be back at the castle again. But there was still a fortnight to go before he went back to school. He looked hopelessly around his room again, and his eye paused on the birthday cards his 2 best friends had sent him at the end of July. What would they say if Harry wrote to them and told them about his scar hurting? At once, Hermione Granger's voice seemed to fill his head, shrill and panicky. Your scar hurt? Harry, that's really serious. Write to Professor Dumbledore, and I'll go and check common magical ailments and afflictions. Maybe there's something in there about cursed scars. Yes, that would be Hermione's advice. Go straight to the headmaster of Hogwarts, and in the meantime, consult a book. Harry stared out of the window at the inky blue-black sky. He doubted very much whether a book could help him now. As far as he knew, he was the only living person to have survived a curse like Voldemort's. It was highly unlikely, therefore, that he would find his symptoms listed in common magical ailments and afflictions. As for informing the headmaster, Harry had no idea where Dumbledore went during the summer holidays. Which is an excellent question. I wonder if he owns a place in Godric's Hollow. Maybe? Or maybe he just stays at Hogwarts. I don't know. I always just assumed the teacher stayed at Hogwarts, but why? What kind of a social life is that? I don't know. There has to be life outside of Hogwarts, right? I guess. I don't know. I have no idea. You know what? I bet Pottermore knows. I haven't been on Pottermore in years. There might be something about it in Pottermore. Or the Wiki. The Wiki might know, too. Because of Pottermore, the Wiki might know, actually. Should I look it up? I don't know. Nah, I'm not. There's too many things to look up. This is already a really long stream. The stream is usually only about 1.5 to 2 hours, and it's already 2.5 hours long. He amused himself for a moment, picturing Dumbledore with his long silver beard, full-length wizard robes, and pointed hat, stretched out on a beach somewhere, rubbing suntan lotion onto his long, crooked nose. You know, that actually makes me think of Disney's The Sword in the Stone. When Merlin, he gets tired of, Arthur. He's not called Arthur yet, but he's tired of Arthur not listening to him, so he gets mad, so he goes to Bermuda. And when he comes back, in Merlin, he looks like Dumbledore, so, when he comes back, he's all in vacation wear. Sorry, it's a good movie. It's one of the best. It's a good classic Disney movie. I should watch it again. If I wasn't mad at Disney, I'd be watching it. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't have a way of watching it. Anyway, I'll put Merlin there, because that's what it makes me think of. Where Dumbledore was, though, Harry was sure that Hedwig would be able to find him. Harry's owl had never yet failed to deliver a letter to anyone, even without an address. But what would he write? Dear Professor Dumbledore, sorry to bother you, but my scar hurt this morning. Yours sincerely, Harry Potter. Hope summer's going well. P.S. Where do you go in the summertime? Do you go to Bermuda? Even inside his head, the words sounded stupid. And so he tried to imagine his other best friend, Ron Weasley's reaction, and in a moment Ron's red hair and long-nosed, freckled face seemed to swim before Harry, wearing a bemused expression. "Your scar hurt? But you know who can't be near you now, can he? I mean, you know, wouldn't you? He'd be trying to do you in again, wouldn't he? I don't know, Harry. Maybe scars always twinge a bit. I'll ask Dad." Mr. Weasley was a fully qualified wizard who worked in the misuse of Muggle artifacts office at the Ministry of Magic. But he didn't have any particular expertise in the matter of curses, as far as Harry knew. In any case, Harry did like the idea of the whole Weasley family knowing that Harry, was getting jumpy about a few moments' pain. Mrs. Weasley would fuss worse than Hermione, and Fred and George, Ron's 16-year-old twin brothers, might think Harry was losing his nerve. The Weasleys were Harry's favorite family in the world. He was hoping that they might invite him to stay any time now. Ron had mentioned something about the Quidditch World Cup, and he somehow didn't want his visit punctuated with anxious inquiries about his scar. Harry kneaded his forehead with his knuckles. What he really wanted, and it felt almost shameful to admit it to himself, was someone like a parent. An adult wizard whose advice he could ask without feeling stupid. Someone who cared about him, who had experience with dark magic. Oh, that's so sad. Yeah, you know what Harry needs? Parents. He could ask the Weasleys. He could ask Arthur and Molly. I can understand why he doesn't want to ask Molly, but Arthur Weasley, he might know something, or he'd know who to talk to, you know? Oh, that's so sad. Anyway, and then the solution came to him. It was so simple and so obvious that he couldn't believe it had taken so long. Sirius. Harry leapt up from the bed, hurried across the room, and sat down at his desk. He pulled out a piece of parchment toward him, loaded his eagle feather quill with ink, wrote "Dear Sirius," then paused, wondering how best to phrase his problem, so marveling at the fact that he hadn't thought of Sirius straight away. But then, perhaps it wasn't so surprising. After all, he had only found out that Sirius was his godfather 2 months ago. There was a simple reason for Sirius's complete absence from Harry's life until then. Sirius had been in Azkaban, the terrifying wizard jail, guarded by creatures called Dementors, sightless, soulless fiends, who had come to search for Sirius at Hogwarts when he had escaped. Yet Sirius had been innocent. The murders for which he had been convicted had been committed by Wormtail, Voldemort's supporter, whom nearly everybody now believed dead. Harry, Ron, and Hermione knew otherwise, however. They had come face to face with Wormtail only the previous year, though only Professor Dumbledore had believed their story. For one glorious hour, Harry had believed that he was leaving the Dursleys at last, because Sirius had offered him a home once his name had been cleared, but the chance had been snatched away from him. Wormtail had escaped before they could take him to the Ministry of Magic, and Sirius had had to flee for his life. Harry had helped him escape on the back of a hippogriff called Buckbeak, and since then, Sirius has been on the run. The home Harry might have had if Wormtail had not escaped had been haunting him all summer. It had been doubly hard to return to the Dursleys knowing that he had so nearly escaped them forever. Dumbledore wouldn't have let that happen anyway. Nevertheless, Sirius had been of some help to Harry, even if he couldn't be with him. It was due to Sirius that Harry now had all his school things in his bedroom with him. The Dursleys had never allowed this before. Their general wish of keeping Harry as miserable as possible, coupled with their fear of his powers, had led them to lock his school trunk in the cupboard under the stairs every summer prior to this. But their attitude had changed since they had found out that Harry had a dangerous murderer for a godfather, for Harry had conveniently forgotten to tell them that Sirius was innocent. It wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have changed their mind. He's a criminal just for having greasy long hair. That's not allowed in the Dursley household. So, Harry had received 2 letters from Sirius since he had been back at Privet Drive. Both had been delivered, not by owls, as was usual with wizards, but by large, brightly colored tropical birds. Ooh, maybe Sirius Black is in Bermuda. Hedwig had not approved of these flashy intruders. She had been most reluctant to allow them to drink from her water tray before flying off again. Harry, on the other hand, had liked them. They put him in mind of palm trees and white sand, and he hoped that, wherever Sirius was, Sirius never said in case the letters were intercepted, he was enjoying himself. Yes, I love the beach. I love tropical places. I mean, I've never really been to a tropical place. By tropical place, I mean Florida. I doubt Sirius is in Florida. But I would love to go to more tropical places than Florida. Where am I? Oh, somehow Harry found it hard to imagine Dementors surviving for long in bright sunlight. Yeah. Perhaps that was why Sirius had gone south. Sirius's letters, which were now hidden beneath the highly useful loose floorboard under Harry's bed, sounded cheerful, and in both of them he had reminded Harry to call on him if ever Harry needed to. Well, he needed to now, all right. Harry's lamp seemed to grow dimmer as the cold gray light that precedes sunrise slowly crept into the room. Finally, when the sun had risen, when his bedroom walls had turned gold, and when sounds of movement could be heard from Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia's room, Harry cleared his desk of crumpled pieces of parchment and reread his finished letter. When it says, finally, when the sun had risen, when his bedroom walls had turned gold, it reminds me of my bedroom in high school. My parents were crazy, and they let me paint my walls a couple times when I was a kid. I was one of those kids. I was very lucky as a kid. My mother really liked to paint our bedroom walls. I remember when I was a preteen, she painted my wall a gooseberry purple. And she bought me, like, matching bed covers. And that was the first time I had my own room to myself. And I actually had, like, an adult bed. I had, like, a double bed. Whereas now I have a single bed. Whereas now I'm actually an adult and I have a child's bed. It's so sad. Become a patron. Become a patron and support me. Then I can afford an adult bed, please. I'm just kidding. And then after that, I got my own room. We moved to Washington State. And at first, my bedroom was painted an olive green color because I really liked the like an olive green and like a light pink color. I liked that combination of colors. And then we changed it to scarlet and gold for Gryffindor. On the opposite walls. So like the wall with my closet and the opposite wall were scarlet, and then the wall with the window and the opposite wall, they were gold, like a yellow color. And when the sun shone through that window, it would get so bright in my room because the sun would reflect off the yellow wall that was mostly blank for a long time. I just remember just like Saturday mornings of sleeping in and waking up to just bright sunlight in my room, and that's what that makes me think of. Eventually, I covered all of my walls in stuff. Was that wall covered in Harry Potter stuff? I don't think so. Yes. I had several posters at one point. And I covered it in Harry Potter. Like, every inch of my wall was covered in something. I had 2 walls dedicated to Harry Potter. 1 wall dedicated to just Daniel Radcliffe. And then the last wall was dedicated to everything else. My walls were entirely covered apart from, in between the posters and stuff where it had yellow and scarlet. Anyway. Fun times. Crazy times. Anyway. Oh, Harry's letter to Sirius. Dear Sirius, thanks for your last letter. That bird was enormous. It could hardly get through my window. Things are the same as usual here. Dudley's diet isn't going too well. My aunt found him smuggling donuts into his room yesterday. They told him they'd have to cut his pocket money if he keeps doing it, so he got really angry and chucked his PlayStation out of the window. You monster! I would kill to have a PlayStation. Isn't that weird? Dudley has a console that can play a game based on the book that he's in. That's so weird. There's so many PlayStation Harry Potter games. That's weird. That's bizarre to me. That's sort of a computer thing you can play games on. That's Harry has to explain to Sirius, a boomer, who wouldn't know what a PlayStation is. He's not explaining it to him because he's a boomer. It's because he's a wizard. But anyway. Bit stupid, really. Now he hasn't even got Mega Mutilation Part 3 to take his mind off things. I'm okay, mainly because the Dursleys are terrified you might turn up and turn them all into bats if I ask you to. A weird thing happened this morning, though. My scar hurt again. Last time that happened, it had been because it was because Voldemort was at Hogwarts. Voldemort had been at Hogwarts the whole year, though. Wouldn't his scar hurt the whole year? Why am I just now thinking of this? The entire year. That's proper English. You don't say the whole year, you say the entire year. But I don't reckon he can be anywhere near me now, can he? Do you know if scars sometimes hurt years afterward? I'll send this with Hedwig when she gets back. She's off hunting at the moment. Say hello to Buckbeak for me, Harry. He made it sound very casual, like at the end of the letter, like, by the way. Very clever. Yes, thought Harry, that looked all right. There was no point putting in the dream. He didn't want to look as though he was too worried. He folded out the parchment and laid it aside on his desk, ready for when Hedwig returned. Then he got to his feet, stretched, and opened his wardrobe once more. Without glancing at his reflection, he started to get dressed before going down to breakfast. And that is the end of chapter 2, finally. Only about 20 minutes. I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but I wanted to talk a little bit about my shirt. I got this shirt at Universal Studios. I think I mentioned that before, but I'm going to mention it again because I want to make sure I talk about it. The shirt is awesome, by the way. It has the number 7 on it because it also says Potter on the back. And I probably did show this off before. It's kind of hard to see. You can see that. It says Potter on the back. And he's player number 7 because he is the Seeker, and the Seeker is player number 7. That's fun because you can get one for every house at Universal Studios, but it says a different name on the back depending on what house you have. So, Hufflepuffs say Diggory on the back, Ravenclaws say Chang on the back, and Slytherins say Malfoy on the back. I think that's way cool. So, if you ever head down there, get one. They're so cool. I love it. Yeah. I just decided to throw that out there, just in case I haven't talked about it before. I will be releasing a video about my trip to Universal Studios soon. I have a lot going on, and it's a big project, and I was working on other projects too at the time, during this time. So I went on the trip last year in September, and it's almost been a year since I've been. So I will be releasing that soon, I promise. I'm going to plan on working on it this week, actually. But anyway, that is the end of the stream for today. Thank you so much for watching and for listening and reading with me. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, please leave a like on the stream or the video, depending on when you're watching this. Even if it's no longer live, please click the like button. It still counts. If you're not a subscriber, click subscribe. I would like to get to 50 subs, please, 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 and thank you. And turn on notifications so you can be notified the next time I upload and the next time I go live. I plan on going live next weekend. I'm on vacation next weekend, but I'm not going anywhere, and I really want to keep up this momentum on my channel, so I do plan on live streaming, but that does have potential to change. So if you want to know what my live stream schedule is going to be, I will post that on Twitter, link in the description. Also linked in the description is my Instagram and my TikTok. And also in the description is my Patreon if you'd like to support me, or if you like to read, or if you like to read and would like to read my pieces, my work, my writing. I still haven't figured out the best way to say that. But I have stuff on there, and I have, if you like Harry Potter, I have a Harry Potter essay on there. You would have to become a patron, just $5 a month. Uh-oh. Oh, sorry. I thought my internet just cut out. In order to read it, but it's 60 pages of Harry Potter goodness, because I analyze the Harry Potter films. And you might enjoy that, so check that out on my Patreon. But if you don't have money, but you'd still like to read stuff, I have plenty of free stuff on there as well, link in the description. And continue to discuss in the comment section as well. I read those, and I will respond to you when I see them. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a magical evening. Bye-bye!